Hello and welcome to a new video. Once again, I'm going to be talking about Multiversus. If you've ever played a platform fighter or Smash-like or whatever you might want to call it, chances are the entire roster was immediately available from the start, or there was a base roster and you can unlock other characters along the way. Multiversus has something somewhat similar and somewhat different. It arguably does have a base roster, the ones you saw in that cinematic trailer advertising the game. But the way it handles unlocking new characters is very different from conventional platform fighters or fighting games in general. At any given time, there's 4 characters available to play as. Wonder Woman is perpetually available, and there's 3 others usually chosen based on the character archetype: mage, tank, bruiser, support, that sort of stuff. That is also on free rotation. Periodically, what 3 other free characters are to play as changes. The way to access characters who aren't immediately available is to play as the ones who are, and at the end of every match, you'll receive a certain number of coins depending on if you won or lost, and if you rack up enough of them, you can purchase one of the characters on the roster who isn't available to play as forever. It's worth pointing out that you don't have to pay any actual money to unlock all of the characters. It's more of an investment of time. This is a system of unlocking characters that the game has at this point shut down with, and I hope that when it relaunches in 2024, it's not that system. Before I talk about why I think this system doesn't work particularly well, I think I ought to try and anticipate a steelman argument as to why player-first games came up with this system. From a purely practical standpoint, if you're grinding for coins that come at the end of matches, that means you're playing the game. And the more you're playing the game, the more likely it is that you might purchase some of the cosmetics and skins that do require real-world money to have. Additionally, a lot of the characters and their movesets can come off as a bit cryptic and unconventional. I don't think it's a coincidence that Wonder Woman is a character who is perpetually available regardless of rotation. She's probably the most straightforward character in terms of movesets that can be in a fighting game. Whether you're moving on from other Smash-likes or other fighting games, or just other games in general, she's a character who's most reliable, intuitive, and effective for what movesets she has. When playing around and experimenting, I find that Garnet, Shaggy, Jake, and Finn to a lesser degree are also similarly very easy to understand characters. One of the reasons that they're very easy to understand is that most of their moves are direct results of actions and consequences. You punch or swing a sword, and that does damage. It doesn't require any setups. It doesn't require you to think ahead of the curve. Now compare that with a character like Gizmo, who has 2 moves that don't do direct damage, but instead exist to service a separate move that does allow them to do damage. Hitting a completely standstill Shaggy with the popcorn and bow and arrow move is pretty easy, but hitting an actual other player who intends to preserve his character's life while taking your character's own is much more difficult. It requires you to anticipate what they'll do in the next few seconds, as well as allow for the possibility that the move straight up won't do anything, that the character might dodge or move to the other side of the map, or just be anywhere where that move would no longer be effective. Characters like Gizmo, Bugs Bunny, Marvin the Martian, or Iron Giant are ones that require you to think ahead a little bit. There is risk, but there is reward, and when you're able to successfully utilize your character's kit to its full extent, it's satisfying. However, for someone who's just picking up the game for the first time, having all of these characters with all of these varying different movesets could come off as overwhelming and perhaps prompt them to not play the game because they're just not getting it. When there's only 4 characters to choose from, and they're based on the varying character classes the game has to offer, it allows for any newcomers to kind of ease in and learn the ropes of the game before delving deeper into the complexities of all the different mechanics. That is, I think, a fair assessment of what the developers might have been thinking when coming up with this system. My first major issue is that Multiversus is a game that will continue to add characters over the course of its existence. Some characters are probably very welcomed. I'm sure many people were excited about Velma or Marvin or Rick and Morty joining the roster. I think comparatively fewer, but still a decent amount, were excited about the Gremlins reps or LeBron James. And maybe there were like 1 or 2 people who were popping off because Black Adam joined the game. Both of them being Warner Brothers corporate executives, but they were there. Now let's say someone wasn't playing the game initially, and then they hear about an interesting character that they actually like has joined the roster and decide, fuck it, it's free to play, I'll just download it and see what that character's like. Well, they're going to be a bit disappointed when they get through all of the tutorials when they discover that the character is not immediately free to play. They have to grind in order to unlock that character. They have to do effectively work. And this problem could be compounded depending on what character is added to the game. For example, there's leaks to indicate that they were in fact working on the Joker being in Multiversus prior to the game shutting down. The Joker is an incredibly popular character. Just about everyone and their mother knows who he is. He's also a character with tons of skin potential. Have a skin where he looks like one of his many movie counterparts, or the outfit he wore in The Killing Joke. The sky's the limit with the guy. So if the Joker is added to the game, someone might actually pick up the game for the first time and might even purchase one of the skins for the guy if it's based on one of his appearances that that person particularly likes. And how do I know that this would happen? Because that's exactly what I did when Marvin the Martian dropped. I knew Marvin was eventually coming to the game based on the roster leaks, and I also knew that he would have his outfit from the 2003 Duck Dodgers show. That was one of my favorite cartoons growing up, so I was perfectly fine giving a little bit of money for a neat outfit reminiscent of my childhood. Unfortunately, that skin is the only representation of that era of Cartoon Network from my childhood. I was a little bit before Adventure Time and Steven Universe. And I'll say right now, if they add, like, characters from that era, Samurai Jack, Kids Next Door, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Dexter's Lab, Powerpuff Girls, whatever, and they have neat skins for them, I might pick them up as well. Now, by that point, I had enough coins to immediately unlock Marvin and use him, but it would have been rather unfortunate if I just started playing the game and wasn't able to do so. And I think for many people, when they get through the tutorial and realize they can't play as a character they really want to right off the bat, that might be enough to convince them to just uninstall and move on to a different game. Thus, the model becomes a double-edged sword, but one that's more in favor of the people who might just want to move on to something else and the people who'd be interested in sticking around and playing the game. I think the system also discourages experimentation, where if someone has to grind for a certain character and there's all these different choices to choose from, then it might come off as overwhelming and discouraging to even spend that money on a character. Not the least, what if they add someone else in a couple of days? This issue also comes up in large part due to the game's matchmaking, but I think it's related. Here are the stats of the individual characters for the fight you're seeing right now. Yeah, that level 2 Taz is kind of up shit creek without a paddle. It means that he's not having fun because he's at an inherent disadvantage, and it also means that his teammate is probably having a little bit less fun due to that handicap. He's so low level that he's only unlocked one of the additional skill things and has no perks, whereas myself and my partner are fully decked out. So effectively, he and his partner are being punished for the decision to try and play a new character. And while this is, again, an issue of matchmaking, the game allowing someone with only a level 2 character to contend against people probably utilizing their mains, it is still something that discouraged people from buying and unlocking different characters. And you really gotta feel bad for the guy, because after all the nerfs Taz has received over the course of the game's lifetime, it's really difficult to be a dishonest Taz. And the skills and perks thing also compound the problem, because now not only do you need to grind in order to unlock a character you want to play as, but you also have to suffer a fact that your character is going to be inherently worse due to not having access to these additional elements of gameplay that sit on top of your moveset. This wouldn't be as much of a problem if all of the characters were available to play as to begin with, but now you have the prospect of also needing to take time to allow yourself to play at full capacity with the character. And I don't just mean learning the character's moveset and how to use it optimally. Personally, I think a much better system would be to have like all the characters available to play as from the start, and maybe 3 or 4 starting skills and a starting perk before you start experimenting later on. That, and maybe some better matchmaking that takes into account how high your character's individual level is and not just how skilled you are overall in the game. And also, to be quite honest, it might legitimately help people pick up new characters and not just focus on the ones that are the current meta. Because watching through my old footage, I am seeing a lot of Shaggys and Supermans. For what it's worth, the developers have said that they do intend to rework the progression system for when the game relaunches, so hopefully when the game does come back next year, it'll be much more newcomer friendly in the sense of giving access to the roster of characters they have available. Anyways, this has just been a bit of a short video where I discuss one of the issues Multiversus had. I hope you enjoyed the video, that I gave you something to think about and otherwise entertained you. Take care.